right, so go ahead and pause the video and double check your answers that you were supposed to finish in that last video. And make sure you're double checking your T-charts. All right, so in this last part of our section, we're going to talk about what happens when our A value is no longer a 1. So when we have an amplitude of something else and how that's going to affect our graph. So we still want to start out by figuring out what that amplitude is. So in this case, my amplitude will be 4. And then I also want to find the period right away, so that part's not going to change. So our B value is 1. We're assuming that we are in radians, so 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. And then we're going to make our T-chart. Okay. So normally for our sine graph, our Y values would be 0, 1, 0, -1, 0. So now that our amplitude is something other than 1, and a positive 1, we're going to take whatever that A value is times the Y values that we would normally have. So I'm going to go through and multiply each of these numbers by, sorry, I should do my A, by 4. So this will be 0, 4, 0, -4, 0. And then the x's we calculate the same as before. So this will be 0 to 2 pi. Half of that is pi. And then this will be pi over 2. And then pi over 2 plus pi is 3 pi over 2. Okay. And then we are ready to graph. Okay. So this time, instead of counting by 4s, I'm actually going to count by 1s. So that means that this will be 4 up here, and then this will be -4. X values, I'm still going to count the same way. So this will be pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And I'm using my X column and then that purple Y column. So this is how my Y values change. So this is the one that I need to use. So we'll have 0, 0, pi over 2, 4, pi 0, 3 pi over 2, -4, and 2 pi 0. So again, my graph is still going to look very similar to all the graphs that we've been graphing so far. So again, what's happening is my scale for my x's is changing, and now my y scale is also going to be changing. So if we continue on to the next one, so same thing. So I'm going to start by figuring out my amplitude. So my amplitude is 4, and the period is going to be 2 pi divided by 1, which is 2 pi. And then I'm going to make my T-chart. And notice how when I'm making these, I'm leaving a little bit more room on my Y side. And that's because our Y values are being affected by that amplitude. So if we want, it doesn't matter if we find X first or Y first. So if we do our X's first this time, we're still going from 0 to 2 pi, cutting that in half, cutting it in half again, and then adding our pi over 2 and our pi together. So this will be 3 pi over 2. And remember when you're doing that, so that pi over 2 plus pi, we're assuming that it's a 1, and then we're getting that common denominator of 2, and then we're adding those numerators together. So that's where that 3 pi over 2 is coming from. Okay. And then now for this one, this is cosine. So I'm going to refer to this as the base function. So when you hear me use that terminology, that's either me referring to cosine or sine as whatever our starting function is. So normally for cosine, our values are 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. So now because we have an amplitude of something other than 1, and we have a negative here, so there's also a reflection happening, that means that I'm going to have to adjust my Y values. So again, we're going to take whatever our A value is. So in this case, our A is that -4 times all of our cosine values. So I'm going to multiply each of these numbers by -4 this time. So this will be -4, 0, 4, 0, -4. And then my scale is going to be ones again, so 4 to negative 4. And then I'm still using that pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi when I graph my x's. And then I'm using this column and this column. So 0, negative 4 to start with. Pi over 2, 0. Pi, positive 4. 3 pi over 2, 0. And 2 pi, negative 4. And then making that cosine shape. All right, so on these next two, I would like you to go ahead and pause the video and then work on finding those graphs. All right, so amplitude is 3 for this one and 1/2 for the other. And then we're finding our period. So again, we're assuming that we're in radians. So for the period, this will be 2 pi divided by our b value, which is 6. So then this will simplify to be pi over 3. And then on the period for the other one, this will be 2 pi divided by 1/3. So that really means that we're taking 2 pi times 3 over 1. So that is going to give me 6 pi for the period. Okay. And then we have something other than a positive 1 for our a value. So that means that we're going to have to account for that as we make our t-charts. And again, it doesn't matter if you find the x's first or the y's first. So I'm just going to write in that base function. So base function is sine for the first one, which means if we didn't have this transformation, this would start off as 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. And then on my other one, I'm dealing with cosine. So normally this would be from 1, 0, negative 1, 0, and 1. Okay. So I'm just going to do my x's first. So remember, for the x, that's always with the period. So we're going from 0 to pi over 3. And then I'm cutting that in half. So really what's happening is we are taking pi over 3 times 1/2. So this will be pi over 6. And then I need to cut that in half again, so multiplying by that 1/2, so this will be pi over 12. And then last, we are adding that pi over 12 plus pi over 6. So we will need that common denominator. So this will have to become a 12, so I'm multiplying by 2. So then the top part will become 2. So that means that this will be 3 pi over 12, which we would then simplify to be pi over 4. And then now for my adjusted y values. I'm taking my a, so in this case that is negative 3 times what I would have for sine. So these get multiplied by negative 3. So 0, negative 3, 0, 3, 0. And then I'm using those two columns for my graph. So I'm going to count by ones again for my y's. Okay. And then the tick marks will just be those x's. So pi over 12, pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3. And I'm starting at 0, 0. And then pi 12, negative 3, back to 0, up to 3, back to 0. So notice how my sine graph started down this time when we graphed instead of up. So again, that's happening because of this reflection. So on the next one, let's find the y's first. So again, it doesn't matter if we find x's first or y's first. So I am taking a times my cosine function. So my a is 1/2. So that means I'm taking each of these values times my a of 1/2. So this will be 1/2, 0, negative 1/2, 0, and 1/2. So for my scale, I am going to count by fourths again. So this will be the 1/2, and up here will be the 1. And if you picked a different scale, that's fine, as long as you have it clearly marked. So I counted a little bit further just to get my wave in there a little bit nicer, but you don't have to pick that as the scale. And then for the x's, we're using that period again. So we're going from 0 to 6 pi, and then half of that is 3 pi. Half of that is 3 pi over 2. And then we are going to need to add 3 pi over 2 plus 3 pi. So we're assuming that's over 1. And then we need that common denominator, so this will be 2. And then 3 times 2 is 6. So that means that I will have 9 pi over 2. Okay. And then I'm ready to graph. So again, my x's, same way I've been counting. So 3 pi over 2, 3 pi, 9 pi over 2, and 6 pi. So 0, 1/2, 3 pi over 2, 0, 3 pi, negative 1/2, then back to 0, back to 1/2. All right, so in our next video, we're going to talk about how we account for our left and right shifts and our up and down shifts.